Your choices when exporting a project or assets from Premiere Pro can be overwhelming, so I'm going to try to make some sense of all that in this lesson. Go to Working Files and open up Projects, and then go on down to 2102 Export Formats. I have a very basic 4-clip sequence to use as our foundation here when we look at export formats. You can export a sequence or a clip from the project panel or the source monitor. You can export them as videos or still images or audio files. So here are the export format options. You've got the sequence selected, then you go to File, Export. And these are the main options. Media is the most commonly used one. You can also export a title that you can use later in other projects. You can export to tape if you've got a tape drive hooked up. It's grayed out now because we don't have one hooked up. There's an edit decision list. There's an OMF, which is Open Media Format or Open Media Framework that works with Pro Tools. AAF, Advanced Authoring Format, and then finally the Final Cut Pro XML files. We're going to focus entirely on media, so I'm going to click on that. That opens up this Export Settings dialog box, which is kind of your intermediary step as you head on over to the Adobe Media Encoder. What you want to look at here are all the various formats. This is the drop-down list of the formats, and at first you might kind of go, whoa, that's a lot of things to choose from. Just need to think about them in terms of what they are. First of all, there are a bunch of still image formats here. You've got BMP, GIF, JPEG, PNG, Targa, and TIFF. Those are all still image formats. You've got some audio formats as well, AAC, AIFF, and scrolling on down, you got waveform audio. And then you have a bunch of video formats. Some of these things are called containers, like AVI and QuickTime MOV files and the MXF. They're all containers. They basically are wrappers in which you've got video that's been encoded in any one of several different codecs, compression, decompression schemes. Then you've got other files that use basically the same kind of compression, but compress at different rates. We'll take a look, for instance, at a commonly used one that's QuickTime. QuickTime makes MOV files, and so you see that it shows up there as an MOV file. Then you have some presets in terms of the resolution and frame rate. That's kind of limiting. The thing about MOV files is that they are containers, so then you work with a codec inside the container here. There's the codec. And here's really where the options lie, all these different various kinds of compression and decompression schemes that can go on inside an MOV file. So you can go for very high quality like DVC Pro, or you can kind of knock things down with H.264. Various codecs that run inside that. On the other hand, you got to export directly to the H.264 format by selecting this here. This is probably the most commonly used export format. It creates MP4 files. The amount of presets here is overwhelming. Android, iPad, iPhone, YouTube, Vimeo, HD, NTSC, PAL, you name it. So H.264 may end up being your go-to format. You can also export MPEG-2 in a variety of flavors, specifically for Blu-ray. That sets it up at a higher frame rate, and MPEG-2 for DVD is a lower frame rate. If I switch to MPEG-2 DVD, you're going to see this change over here because MPEG-2 DVD is not HD, it is widescreen. And so there's a little difference here between HD and widescreen, just so you see the difference there. If I switch over to MPEG-2 Blu-ray, then that is HD, so it shifts back to what you'd expect when we're working with HD video like that. So the basic workflow is you select the format, you select a preset or a codec down here or both, and then you go down and you can queue it up to open up the Adobe Media Encoder, and you can have several files in the queue, or you can just click export and it'll export this file right away without opening up the Media Encoder, at least not opening it up so you can see it. That's that workflow. There are a couple of other workflows, let me just show you them. If you want to export a sequence and have it open up in Encore, you don't need to encode it for MPEG or Blu-ray. You can just dynamically link to it from within Encore, or you can send it to Encore from Premiere. So you go File, Adobe Dynamic Link, and then Send to Encore. If you do that, it opens up Encore. It looks like this. Encore will open up with your sequence there in a timeline. It takes your sequence right there. It's dynamically linking to your sequence. That little icon means it's a Premiere Pro sequence. And then it converts it to a timeline, which is what you work with here inside Encore. And here's the timeline down there. You've seen this before, right? And once inside Encore, you can create menus and make links to this thing. And then when you export it, then it's transcoded. So what's good about this is that it stays in its pristine format, running right off of the original assets without being changed until you're actually ready to create the DVD or the Blu-ray project. If you want to learn more about Encore, feel free to take a look at my Infinite Skills course, Learning Adobe Encore CS6. Go back to Premiere Pro. There's one more workflow that's brand new to CS6. Go File and Send to Adobe SpeedGrade. This is Adobe SpeedGrade CS6. It's brand new to Adobe, but it's a product that's been around for a while. It's a color correction, color grading product from Germany. Adobe bought out the company that makes this product, and they put an Adobe interface on it and released it for CS6 At this early stage in the Adobe Creative Suite integration process, the workflow is still kind of a work in progress, but at this point you simply export a Premiere Pro sequence into SpeedGrade where you do your color correction and color grading work. So those are the basic formats and processes that you can use to export sequences and assets from Premiere Pro. I'm going to go over some of the details about the workflow in the next lesson.